Good morning. How's everyone doing? Great. Great to see you all here, and truly delighted to be back here for my fourth exchange. I was just reflecting, this event started 25 years ago, the 26th one now going on, and through the course of this time, there have been so many changes for our business, for the market environment, and just in the context of how we've represented ourselves, starting with Wonderware, then looking at the broader Invensys as a company, moving to Schneider Electric, and now the next phase of our evolution as a business, which I truly think is going to be a transformative one for us. And through that process, I hope we can truly enable the digital transformation of industry. So I'd like to give you a little context into how we've changed in the very, very recent past, and then step back and talk you through, some of which I did last year, but update you in terms of where we see the landscape evolving, and more importantly, what we are doing as a business to help our customers undertake the digital transformation journey. So in February 2018, I believe we achieved a very significant milestone in the landscape and in the evolution of engineering and industrial software, when the software business of Schneider Electric, with which all of you are familiar, combined with Aveva, a market leader in the plant design space, and started operating as of that day as a listed company. So the overview of the transaction, and I'll talk you through why we did this very shortly, but to give you a sense of what the transaction is about, Schneider Electric Software was spun out and merged with Aveva, which was already a listed software company, to create a global leader with combined revenues of a little over 650 million pounds. When we look at our track record through the course of the subsequent financial year we just concluded, we are very, very close to being a billion-dollar company. And that's a significant scale to achieve. The transaction was announced in September of last year, and it was closed in February once we got all of the regulatory approvals. Now, what's also important is that whilst Schneider Electric has done the spin-off and the merger, the relationship that we have with Schneider Electric remains a very, very strong one. And that's particularly important to point out. Number one, Schneider remains a 60% shareholder in the new company. And this is important for a couple of reasons. One is whilst now as an independent listed software company, we've got a lot more flexibility in terms of how we define our strategy, both organic and inorganic, look for opportunities for continued consolidation and growth in the industrial software space. At the same time, we are retaining a strong link with Schneider Electric as an emerging force in the world of industrial transformation with its large portfolio in the electrical energy management automation space. That is very good and unique context as far as we're concerned. So we now have a unique opportunity to continue the path of being agnostic, which we always were, but yet retain a relationship with an industrial major as we craft our own strategy. And I think that's going to be extremely beneficial for us. And more importantly, I think that's going to be beneficial to our customers. So the way the governance has been set up is that there are two non-executive directors from Schneider Electric on the board of the company. We have defined our working relationships in the form of commercial agreements. So as far as you're concerned, as a customer, nothing changes. So for our customers around the world, nothing changes. If they had a contractual relationship with Schneider, that remains intact, and we have figured out how Aveva and Schneider will continue to work back to back. If there's a separate agreement with the software business, that moves over with the software business into the new Aveva, and we'll continue to engage as before. So we've made it sure that for our customers, the transaction remains a seamless experience while capitalizing on all of the advantages that we can create. I'm privileged to be the Chief Operating Officer of the new company, responsible for all of the business units, the portfolio, the strategy, and the solution delivery operations of the business. There is a new CEO who was appointed on close of the transaction. Craig Hayman joined the company from PTC, where he was earlier the Chief Operating Officer. James Kidd, who was the CEO earlier of Aveva, has now moved to the CFO position, and Phil Aiken remains the chairman. So with that as a background, what is a transaction rationale? If you look at our business, and that of Aveva's as well, prior to the close of the transaction, the markets that we address primarily are the capital-intensive industries. And we are looking at two important value chains as far as our customers' business life cycles are concerned. There's an asset life cycle, and there's an operation cycle. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. But in the context of setting up, commissioning, and operating capital assets, there are two important phases, the project phase and the operation phase, as we all know. And the challenge that we've always seen in the market is that there are gaps. So whilst we, as formerly Schneider Electric Software, had all the tools and technologies to provide solutions around process engineering and process design, the activities around actual plant design were done with a different set of technologies. Now, both of these naturally come together in a set of work processes managed by EPCs, managed by end customers, but there is certainly a gap in terms of that process. There are inefficiencies that get generated through that process. So one of the founding theses for this transaction was the fact that we need to start looking at engineering as a unified discipline, both in terms of how we model the process and the behavior of the assets combined with how we actually design the physical assets. So get rid of some of the manual processes, drive for cost and time improvements, which is absolutely important in today's capital budget constrained world, and drive efficiency. So that was one of the founding tenets of this thesis. Probably what's going to be more prominent as we go forward, and this is topical to the whole digital transformation message, is the asset lifecycle management gap. Because now you design and commission assets, but then they have to run through 50, 60 years of an asset lifecycle, delivering value through an operating process every day. That's got to be managed day to day, minute to minute on a real-time basis, but you also have to make sure that your assets are functioning effectively, they're reliable, they're operating safely. Yeah? And so in order to do that, the design information and the engineering information increasingly starts to play a vital role in how companies can ensure the reliable and safe operations of their assets. These used to be disconnected worlds, but it is a very important outcome of digitalization, call it what you will. It is an extremely important outcome of that, and we believe that with the portfolio now, we have a unique opportunity to bring that to life. So that became the second founding thesis for this transaction. So the fundamental reason we did this was we saw a gap in terms of the value chains of our customers in the context of their business, the available technologies, and how we could uniquely bring together a marriage of two very complementary portfolios to address these gaps. Secondary to all of this was, of course, that structurally this transaction would enable us to operate as an independent software company, which means how we make our investments, how we define our roadmap, how we potentially do further acquisitions, consolidations, if you will, that gives us a lot more flexibility. And that's great in terms of being able to craft and execute an independent strategy, right? So these were two important tenets of the transaction. So I talked to you about the complementary portfolios. This represents the life cycle of capital assets, design, commissioning, and operation in a typical sense. You see certain areas that you're familiar with, HMI, SCADA, operations management, for example. And so we look at the CapEx phase, typically 2 to 6 years, that you commission and ensure that the asset is up and running efficiently. And then there's the entire long operations phase. You've got to leverage technologies to make sure everything is working well. Now, from the context of our relationship earlier, we have a portfolio of solutions and technologies that all of you have worked with. So if you look at the Wonderware brand, obviously very strong and prominent in the HMI SCADA space, but increasingly with our strategy of coming together with a common SCADA platform, we have now brought together all of the SCADA assets that we had in Schneider Electric, be it Cytec, be it ClearSCADA, Oasis, into a common SCADA platform strategy. And that started to play out and work extremely well. Wonderware also been used in the MES space, but if you now cut across to the mining sector, Ampla as an execution management solution is certainly very, very strong and something that we really lead to market with. So these represent technologies that all of us are familiar with and we've had working relationship. But if you look at the design, build, commission phase, these represent Aveva's technologies. And rarely have I seen a portfolio that is so complementary. So that truly gives us a unique opportunity to address those value cycle gaps that I talked about earlier with a portfolio that's uniquely complementary. Why is this important? Because it allows us to approach portfolio integration without having to spend time on what we rationalize out. That's where a lot of these integrations tend to take time. And for us, what this means is that we can hit the ground running. In fact, a lot of the early thinking has been done, and we hope to be able to come to market very, very soon with a set of initial solutions that start to deliver the promise of why we did this transaction in the first place. Now, in addition to that, what this transaction also gives us is a unique global scaled business. So as Schneider Electric Software, we had a wide industrial footprint. We had a strong exposure and experience, of course, in the oil and gas sector. Aveva is also very strong in the oil and gas sector, so that intensity of vertical domain remains. So that's circa 46% of what the company is about. But there's additional areas of expertise and capability that Aveva have brought to the table. One is a significant body of experience and capability in dealing with the needs of EPC companies, and that's a very unique capability that gets added to the portfolio. Aveva's technology is also the market leader in terms of shipbuilding, because ships, again, being complex assets, much like an upstream production rig, for example, and Aveva's 3D technology has been extremely effective and become very rapidly the market leader in that space. Coupled with what we already had in Schneider Software in terms of working with industries such as the mining and metals industry, the food and bev industry, water, wastewater, power, for example, this truly gives us a diversified portfolio. Our geographical footprint is much more balanced, looking at it through the lens of both the historical Schneider Software business and Aveva. So that's a good geographical balance. It's given us scale. We are now close to 4,500 people worldwide. We've over 1,000 people working in R&D. We have over 1,000 people dedicated to solution delivery within our organization. We have a footprint of over 10 R&D centers, 22 quality certified delivery centers worldwide. But very, very importantly, and I've stressed this every time, our ecosystem is a unique strength that we have as a company, and we're going to retain that strength and that capability going forward. So our over 4,000 system integrator partners, our ongoing program to ensure that we continue to invest in the certification and capability building of those system integration partners, continuing to build technology relationships. And at the end of the day, it is our intent to become truly global as a company. That map represents where we have a footprint in R&D, solution delivery, our major partner offices, for example, and we want to make sure that we are getting really good coverage, because we recognize that for our customers, the problems that you face today and tomorrow are going to be increasingly global in nature. Whether or not you have a footprint in a part of the world, somewhere your value chain gets impacted by something that's happening in an industrial environment in another part of the world, whether we directly influence it or not. And so as a technology company, our ability to play at a global level consistently becomes a very, very important part of our strategy going forward. So with that background now, what I'd like to do is step back and give you some context in terms of our strategy, how we are really looking at our portfolio and strengths in the context of what's happening in the industry. So if I look at the current environment, and we talked about this a bit last time, we developed the thought process a little further later on in the year after Exchange last year. But we really look at this as the fourth industrial revolution, right? So starting way back with water, steam power production, the advent of electricity, and then really starting with the 1970s when you had the emergence of computing systems and the use of software in the manufacturing production environment. What's really important to note is if you look at this business and its heritage, right, it has contributed very, very significantly to the shaping of the industrial technology landscape. So 1967, very coincidentally, marked the start of two important parts of Aveva's portfolio. Simsci as a business started in 1967 doing process design. Aveva started in 1967 as well, doing plant design. So there is a nice poetry to the fact that those two pioneers in the field of process design and plant design now have come together. I think that started a pioneering journey back then, and I truly believe that this is going to be a unique inflection point in terms of what happens in engineering technology. Schneider Electric, also the inventor of the first PLC, and that relationship is something that's going to continue as far as we're concerned, and it's going to be a critical part of how our customers consume integrated software and system solutions. And talking about software, we're all extremely proud. All of you certainly very, very familiar with the Wonderware brand, which started in the 80s with the first Windows-based HMI. For me and for all of us in the business, these are important points of history because it showed that we shaped the industry back then. And as we have now come together, I truly believe that we're going to shape the industry going forward. And what has really enabled a lot of this jump has been, of course, the prevalence of personal computing, the internet, mobile technology. And as you'll see shortly, the emergence of new technologies such as cloud. And so everything around the industrial internet, data analytics, artificial intelligence, the ubiquitous availability of information is really, in our view, going to shape the fourth industrial revolution. And as we look at the challenges that we face together as customers and partners together, it's important to recognize that we rarely come across times when there is so much happening in the evolution of a business landscape. And so that, whilst on one hand being a challenge, also gives us a unique opportunity in terms of how we work together. So we are familiar, and we've talked about this before in terms of the challenges in the market environment. Nothing has fundamentally changed since we talked last year. The commodity price issue, whilst it has eased somewhat, nowhere back to the boom levels, right? So that certainly provides a continuing environment of conservatism, if you will, in terms of how investments are made, right? There's heightened competition. I think one thing that we are seeing as a company, and I think all of our customers are seeing, is that the old boundaries of what companies do is really up for redefinition, right? So people are looking across value chains, looking across things that they've traditionally done to look at where they could compete more effectively. We have, necessarily so, as a society, as government, around the world, become a lot more conscious about our impact on the environment, about quality, about safety. And that is only going to remain intense. And so it is our collective responsibility to make sure that we address that. There's a whole shift happening in terms of generation. And I can't emphasize, we see that as a technology company profoundly, as our workforce is changing. And the good news is that for us, every time there's a young person who joins our company, fresh from college, there's an immediate challenge in terms of questioning what we're doing and the choices we're making. And I think that's happening across the board. As there is a new generation of workforce that is emerging, I think companies around the world are going to have to look at what makes their life interesting and how their output and work can be made more effective. But what we're also grappling with is the sheer pace of technological change. Again, very rarely have so many things come together at the pace they're doing right now, whether it is the emergence of cloud that's enabling sort of global collaboration, indeed forcing it, right? The industrial Internet of Things. What that simply means is that there's so much data and information that's now available. The challenge is, what do we do with it? So then you step across into the world of big data, managing massive amounts of operating information, and figure out how to parse through that, how to abstract it, how to make sense of it. That information has to be consumed across multiple devices that are available. No one's going to be static at their desk anymore. Work habits and environments and processes are going to change. And so the ability of what we do in our applications to make them more mobile-enabled is absolutely critical. And then finally, cybersecurity is absolutely front and center in terms of everyone's concern. And so as a company, as a technology and software company, we got to be absolutely sure that we are equipping everything that we do to the highest levels of cybersecurity, compliance and safety assurance. And we do that. But it's important that, again, it's a collaborative journey that we embark on with our customers. So what all of this translates to for our customers is really a set of business imperatives that we look at in the context of two big life cycles. And I alluded to that earlier. So there is what we call the asset life cycle. It starts for most of our customers who deal with capital-intensive industries, who operate in capital-intensive industries, and where the setting up, commissioning, and operation of capital assets in order to handle the production of commodity products. That's a large part of our market base, right? And so for those industries, it's absolutely critical that the focus starts up front in terms of ensuring that there's a lowering of cost and time risk and the increasing of efficiencies in capital engineering. Then, as the assets are commissioned, ensure that they're monitored and controlled to ensure safety and performance, and that's really the fundamental driver of what is required there. And then, looking at asset longevity. With capital investments being constrained, and it's not just CapEx, it's CapEx and OpEx being significantly constrained, it's important that we squeeze the most in terms of efficiency, in terms of availability of the existing capital assets we have, but without compromising on safety. So that brings the whole problem of asset lifecycle management. This is one way to look at it that drives sort of the return on capital employed. On another dimension, on a day-to-day basis, how do you plan and schedule for your operations so that upfront you're setting the right operating targets, you're sourcing the right feedstock, you're making the right choices so that your production can operate in the right operating envelope, delivering to your target performance criteria. But whilst doing that, also making sure that you're continually optimizing, right? So ensure whether it is the implementation of procedural workflows, whether it is the implementation of rigorous model-based advanced control optimization. Take your pick. It depends on the kind of industry and the unit operation that you have, but it's absolutely important to continually look at how you can optimize. And this discipline is becoming more and more rigorous. So there are two closed loops across the asset life cycle and then across the operations life cycle which drive those efficiencies. And bringing it all together is this ubiquitous envelope of information. How do you make sure that information that is generated in one part of the value chain, take engineering data, for example, how is that used, or how are engineering representation used to make visualization of operations richer? Could that be done? Does that make sense for an operator to really look at a three-dimensional view of an asset, drill down when there is an alarm and figure out what's actually going on, use that highly visual engagement to trigger a maintenance workflow, for example, right? Now, this may be nothing more than better visualization tools, but does that make life easier? Does that make an operator's decision-making capabilities easier? And so those are the questions we have to ask. Can that engineering data be used more effectively in driving a maintenance strategy? Can a maintenance activity be used to update the system of record of a particular asset so that it is kept in mind when we are doing the next upgrade? In the same way, closing the loop on the operations cycle, how can feedstock information be used to drive and design a production schedule, control it to that target, but make sure that you're continually optimizing it and giving feedback for long-range planning. So this information that's available across these life cycles and how it is managed is the essence of what a platform has to deliver. A platform has to provide the ability to manage information across these value chains so that digitization and the seamless integration of processes across these value chains is possible, okay? Which brings us to the notion of what we are now calling the industrial software platform. Our objective behind what we're doing with our portfolio is represented in our strategy for the industrial software platform. At its heart, the objective is to address these very same problems. These problems across these two value chains emanate from the challenges we see in the business landscape and the pace of evolution of technology that we are seeing in the technology landscape. And so if we look at our portfolio mapped to these value chains, every part of the portfolio of the new Aveva now maps to those problem statements, from process design, 3D plant design, material management, contracts handling. In the engineering part, in the capital projects part, things that you're familiar with, monitoring and visualization, supervisory control in the operations part of the life cycle, workforce management, asset performance analytics, asset maintenance, retrofitting, modernization, related to capital asset management, right? So you got complete coverage of the asset life cycle. It varies industry by industry. In some domains, our capabilities are stronger than the others. But we are continually looking to build out these capabilities and make them as relevant and as specialized as possible to every industry that we serve. Then we have, across the operations life cycle, planning and scheduling capabilities, feedstock management, detailed unified planning and scheduling, manufacturing execution that you're familiar with, real-time production optimization. Again, full coverage. And our approach to the platform is making sure that the tenets of interoperability, common visualization tools, common asset models used across the value chain where possible, and a rich suite of analytics is what binds us together. Those are the building blocks of how we address the ubiquity of information across these value chains. And so our strategy around a platform is not to just look at connectivity, pulling up data, sending into the cloud, and coming up with some cute analytics. On one hand, it is founded on the world's leading real-time control and information management platform. You and our customers around the world have trusted us for years, and we've built up an incredible install base. And what that means is the evolution of this platform to handle that world of real-time operating information is unmatched. And so that gives us a very solid foundation. And what we have done over the course of the past few years is build this rich set of applications. So at the end of the day, business process, digitization, enablement, improvement, all is done through the context of applications. So you get data, information, analyze it, abstract it on one hand, but what do you do with it? You can't just throw a set of analytics at a person and say, go figure. You got to now figure out how to automate that. We do automation at a fundamental level every day when we control a process, but we also have to do automation in the context of business processes. And that's what this set of applications, whether it's in engineering, asset performance management, supply chain, operations management, and optimization, all of these applications deliver that rich functionality. These are now seamlessly integrated, but we emphasize it's available in a modular and scalable fashion. You want to start with one point, we can start with one point. But because it is now a seamlessly integrated platform, we can use that to build the digitization story in terms of how you're implementing these technologies going forward. We've got, as we know, the world's best, the most scaled industrial software ecosystem. And we have a very strong native capability for delivering these solutions and supporting our customers. So we're extremely proud of where we've come from, but we have also paid a lot of attention to making sure that these capabilities do not remain manifested as individual point solutions. They can be consumed as such, but it is very important to the context of our strategy in enabling our customers in a digital transformation journey to make sure that we offer this in the context of a unified platform. This is not a monolithic application. So for anyone who has a question, so do I need to have all of that in order to get started? No, you start with one point. But the important thing to note is that from that starting point, if you got to go to the next one, you have the ability to do that seamlessly with capabilities that can support you around the world. So I want to then walk you very, very quickly through a set of examples in terms of how the functionality across this platform is really set up to deliver value, and a few examples around that. So if we look at the core, and the sign on the top right tells you, which part of the value cycle I'm focusing on right now. If you just look at monitoring and control, as you're familiar now, we've got tremendous capability at enterprise-level visualization monitoring. So, situational awareness. It's a tremendous capability that we are providing to operators in the control room scenario. It's system agnostic, so it really means that you don't have to rip and replace. It can be deployed on existing automation system investments, right? And standardization across multiple automation platforms gives a very, very high ROI. Now, this comes together very, very effectively in multiple applications, right? When customers are looking at how to monitor information at an enterprise level. We see that in big companies. We see that in an emerging smart city problem statement where you're looking at data aggregation across multiple systems, and how do you set up a central control room for a city? No different from what you do in a plant environment, right? So one of the success stories that we're extremely proud about is what has recently been commissioned at ADNOC, at their corporate headquarters, a unique visualization environment. And the graphic you see on the top right, does very, very little justice to it. It's a little snapshot of truly, a massive wall of information that's representing real-time information that's coming across from all of the operating companies of ADNOC on a real-time basis. So at the executive level, they have the unique ability to look at what's happening across multiple operating parameters, talk about trading between opcos, talk about the performance versus target of a specific opco, drill down into problem areas where the case may be. And so one of the things when we look at the new Aveva and what this could bring in is imagine a rich 3D visualization environment in this setup where you can actually now go in and start to navigate and explore what is happening in an operating asset of a company. Should that be important? Of course, right? You have manifestations of this available at multiple levels. So this is what we mean by scalable technology. You can bring it all together in one super impressive dashboard, but the same capability is available on a mobile device to an engineer in the field as a representation of information for the activities that he or her is doing in the field at that point in time. So think about what is consumed. So this is something that an executive wants to see, but what is really consumed can be at multiple levels. So this, for us, is a unique manifestation of how visualization, control, and monitoring technologies have truly come together. And this is the start of a journey, and you see the quote from the CEO of ADNOC, it's been extremely effective. And we are now using this as a platform to bring in the next set of capabilities through applications that seamlessly integrate with what they have already deployed. If you look at the engineering space, again, two worlds. Coming from Schneider Electric software, we have historically modeled and simulated the behavior of assets, right? So process design on one side, you can look at it through a simple flow sheet. On the other hand, we have also invested in cool, cutting-edge visualization technologies and virtual reality so that you can train operators using virtual reality-based tools. Using the same powerful chemical engineering and process modeling that exists behind, but also now look at how operators interact with the software and learn pretty much in a flight simulator environment. So that's been a unique capability in upfront process design, now combined with the capabilities that Aveva has. So rich 3D-based modeling so that you can really now start to look at the physical modeling of asset. But as you're working through the engineering process, much like designing a car or a plane or something else, collaboration across multiple operating entities in terms of how an asset or a plant comes together is very critical. So the marriage of process design and plant design is a journey that is starting now. Again, significant success stories. So if you look at Shell, Shell is a huge customer of ours in operator training simulation. They're rolling out a corporate program to equip all of their engineers across their operating sites with the next generation operator training simulators. This then starts moving into a learning system. So that's a conversation that we have with many of our customers, right? How does it move from an operator training simulation when you look at particular scenarios where you can use that infrastructure, that platform, as a basis to deploy enterprise-wide learning systems, right? So that's, again, something to think about. EDF, an Aveva customer, had to really deal with a mass of information. And that's really what you see. You go into an operating company, as many of you are today, and one of the challenges is when you look at the set of assets you have, and you try to look at the record of information that you're trying to access, what is the engineering data? Who built this? What's the maintenance history on this? And especially when you're trying to do an upgrade, or you're trying to do repair, or you're trying to plan the next strategy in terms of should I refresh this asset or can I upgrade it and so on and so forth, access to that information is hugely painful. That means that the digital record of asset information is a massive, massive pain area. And so what Aveva started doing with EDF was really looking at all of their instrumentation control diagram, making sure that they had built up a vast repository of digital objects with which EDF can now start accessing engineering information a lot more easily. Where that is used, again, it goes typically forward into asset performance management, which then brings us into the domain of asset performance management, right? So we've always worked in the area of classic asset performance management, and I'd call that CMMS, simple maintenance management, if you will. But I do think that's now moved to an entirely different plane, a new paradigm. And the paradigm is what we call enterprise asset performance management, which means you're now accessing the world of real-time information to add decision-making capabilities into what you will do with regard to an asset. So advanced pattern recognition, machine learning, early warning notifications, right? And then providing augmented reality-based work instructions to field crew who can actually take action on an asset when required. This is vitally important when looking at complex asset, when you don't have ready access to digitized engineering information, and when you do build that up, you can make this even more powerful when you have highly distributed operating assets. This is a critical capability in terms of providing field crew help and assistance through technology in terms of what they can do, right? And one of the most powerful examples we have is, again, the work that we've done with Duke Energy, a leader in the market in terms of generation, 90 plants in 6 states in the United States. They've had a problem in the past of a catastrophic transformer fire. So they've gone through the pain of what not detecting a problem early can result in. And so our solution was around predictive asset analytics. We are monitoring today 87% of their fleet. So it is also being deployed not only as a technology in-house, but also as a monitoring and a managed service. And we estimate, together with Duke, that they've saved approximately $45 million in cost avoidance, right? Just in terms of getting ahead of problems by looking at potential points of failure, verifying indeed that that is a point of failure. Now, you could also say, hey, that could come from the OEM also. Yeah, but is the OEM looking consistently across all of the machinery that you have? Or do you need the capability in-house to be able to detect across all of your operating assets and make the right decisions? And more often than not, the latter is going to be the case, right? Then coming to planning and scheduling, where we're really coming from is looking at feedstock information. As we're dealing with complex assets, managing high flows of commodity material, you really have not much control in terms of what feedstock comes in. But if you can get visibility to the variability of what's actually coming to the plant, it gives you the ability and to act earlier, to shift your production schedule, to make changes in your operating targets. And that can really drive a lot of efficiencies. And especially when it gets tied downstream to the operational optimization. So we started in this area in the downstream oil and gas space, particularly in refining. And so BP is a great example of this, disconnected process and tools across trading, planning, and scheduling functions. These are typically silos, right? So the traders do things, planners do things, and the schedulers do things. And these typically tend to use different models for what crude is coming to the plant. They operate on different kinds of information, different tools. Excel is very prominent in one half, for example. And so that impacts the ability to make quick purchasing decisions, because a refiner really makes money on this, on where to buy the right crude, what to buy and what to process, and how to adjust operating envelopes based on that. So our solution of unified supply chain really helped BP achieve a lot of benefit. And they've recognized that. They've said not only in terms of time saved, but the accuracy that they have started to get. What we did, again, taking on the notion of the platform, is we use that same supply chain capability now to bring in a unique capability into the mining industry. So the same technology that is used for unified planning and scheduling in the refinery space is now been platformed into a mining supply chain solution. Same technology, same set of algorithms, but a unique industry-specific set of models that we're using to purpose that same platform for mining applications. Combined with our solution for yield accounting and inventory management, that gives a powerful closed-loop solution. And again, Roy Hill in Australia, a powerful example of the benefits of doing this end-to-end. So they're managing a massive, complex operation, 2.3 billion tons of iron ore, processing approximately 1 million tons a day. So bringing together supply chain planning and scheduling, along with production execution, along with information management, is a significant challenge that they were facing. And we brought this together with a legacy set of tools, but now we are moving ahead into terms of how we platform it and bring together an integration of these processes a lot more effectively. And then finally, in operations and optimization, on one hand, a powerful set of models, the same ones that we use for dynamic simulation upfront in process design, now being used later on for continuous production optimization. Again, common asset model. So you build a model once, you use it at different points in the value chain. So think of the refining industry, and again, continuous process optimization. Think of food and bev, CPG, the batch and hybrid industry, for example, and the wonderware technologies that you're familiar with. Effectively solving the same problem of how do you manage execution on a day-to-day basis, consistent with your targets, but also drive up performance through better process digitization and integration, right? And so again, a great example of this, New Belgium Brewery, interested not just in terms of production management, but with a significant challenge around using renewable energy and energy management becoming a very, very important challenge for them. So on one hand, we are looking at streamline the bottling operations, but also to reduce energy consumptions in line with New Belgium's corporate strategy. And so we are able to deliver real, measurable results through our technology. Again, this, from a platform standpoint, bringing together all of that powerful real-time information with the process management capabilities that we had in our manufacturing execution suite. So where does this go next, right? So if you look at all of these, again, to summarize, very strong capability around real-time control, information management, information related to the creation of assets. So these form two important sort of foundational, legs, if you will. And then around that, the whole rich application capability that we have, right? So all of which is now seamless. As you've seen in this, almost every one of those examples worked cross-portfolio to bring capabilities across our portfolio together. The next question is, all right, so what about all of this artificial intelligence? How do I now bring in AI? Because that's the next buzzword, right? And so we look at AI or intelligence as something very simply that aids decision-making, that allows your people and you to make the right decisions. And if you look at it in the scale of complexity on one hand and value on the other hand, I'd say that it's important to break this down into the stages of AI. And we look at it in 4 stages. And if you really look at the dimensionality of this problem, there isn't really much rocket science. And I think it's important for us to step back collectively and make sure that we put all of this in context. To analyze what's happening right now, okay, with a vast amount of information. You got, let's say, 100,000 real-time tags that you're monitoring in your plant. You want to abstract it. You want to look at it through, a set of meaningful historization, or some set of analytics around that, just to understand what's happening right now. Is that intelligence? Yes, it is, right? So just to make the right decisions around looking at real-time data, correlating with some historical information, we're doing that today. And examples of that are condition management capability, intelligence and analytics capabilities that we already have, and that many, many of you are already using. So you've actually started that journey to AI. I mean, one can argue about what does AI mean and what's the dictionary definition of artificial intelligence. I look at it in terms of what does it do to help the business? And what does it do to help people make the right decisions and make better decisions and make sense out of this plethora of information that we have available? So you can look at it in a real-time historical sense. But on the other hand, we are already doing predictive stuff. We're looking at what-if scenarios through open-loop simulation. We're doing that. In our training simulators today, if we are predicting or simulating sort of accident situations or fault situations or failure situations or process abnormality situations, it's equipping operators to act better. It's equipping them to be better prepared. That equally is capability of our leveraging capability of models that we have, mathematical descriptions that we have of our processes, and looking at on a forward-looking basis in terms of analyzing what-if scenarios. That's precisely what we do in predictive analytics. Look at historical trends, project them forward and say, hey, could this cause a problem? Flag an alarm, off we go. We've seen the benefit that Duke Energy, for example, let's realize from that. But then you got to close the loop. And this is really where some of the secret sauce lies, right? How do you take predicted information and then use that to automate decision making? Today, there's a lot of experience in the industry where you can intuitively respond and act to say, okay, I think this is what we should do. That comes through experience. One of the realities of the whole generational shift and the change in sort of operating paradigms of companies is that people who have to make the decisions need better information and need better guidance. It doesn't mean that they're less capable. It's just that the capability profile has shifted from what it was earlier to a much broader capability set, right? So you have a workforce that is potentially more fungible from one area of your business to another. But what that also means is that when they are in one part of the business, you need to make sure that we're equipping them with the capability. And so scenario-based guidance, learning elements, closed-loop algorithms, by the way, which we already do today in real-time optimization, in our closed-loop planning and scheduling. And as we go forward in our integration with the new Aveva, into the new Aveva, we're really going to look across the asset life cycle and see how do you close the loop back from engineering to asset performance management and all the way back. Those two closed loops is really what drives the value. And so we got to look at emerging areas and areas of interest, hype, noise, call you what you will, and look at it in the context of what we are already doing today. And I'll set a set of guidelines as I close this presentation off in a couple of slides. But before we get there, I do want to point out the other important thing in terms of how we are looking at this scenario going forward. I talked about the platform in terms of capabilities. You know, a very strong foundation around real time, a very strong foundation around engineering information management, right? And then very rich capabilities that we have already demonstrated through real-life cases, as you've seen, in terms of how customers are leveraging different parts of the portfolio. It's agnostic, it's modular, it's scalable. And it is truly a platform because it brings everything together. You can take capability that was developed in a refining industry and take it to the mining industry. You can take planning information and use it to close a loop with production optimization, for example. But there is an important dimension of what makes a platform a platform. Every one of those solutions, really, was deployed either by us, typically, or also in conjunction in many, many instances with our rich ecosystem of partners. So if you look at the landscape that we work with, right? So we got 4,200 partners. We have 16,000. Now with the new Aveva, we probably have around 24,000 customers. There are a large number of certified developers on our technology. That, plus the capability that we have, the experience that we have built up, really for us now comes together in terms of a new software marketplace that we launched in fall of last year. And the objective of this marketplace is to facilitate collaboration, better collaboration amongst our ecosystem and ourselves, and also our customers, our ecosystem and ourselves, because we are generating unique capability within our business, within our ecosystem community, and within our customer space as our so the common binding force is our technology and our portfolio. And there is capability creation, asset creation, IP that's being created by us, by our customers, and certainly by our ecosystem partners. So we have now launched this marketplace to try and bring that together, a unique environment for customers to look across our ecosystem in terms of what's available, a unique platform for our ecosystem to publish what they have developed and try and monetize it at a much more global level. So we hope that the journey that we've started, and we've indeed had a tremendous amount of interest, and over the course of this year, we truly intend to scale that up because we believe that there's a big shift in terms of a business model, right? So it's a collaboration platform, but we also hope that it now starts to shape your journey as a customer in terms of how you look at what's available out there and where you can really source this from. So to bring it all together, as you embark on the journey of digital transformation, there are three important points to keep in mind, right? So what's the experience that you can tap into, whether it's yourselves or through a partner like us and our ecosystem? What's the expertise base that you have? And ultimately, how do you know it's going to generate the value? And I'd submit that in terms of the experience we have, nothing best summarizes it in terms of experience and scale than the data sets that we have there. If you look at our software together, right, it is monitoring over 20 billion industrial parameters. We manage 10 trillion industrial transactions per day. We are processing a huge volume of information. That's vital to a digital transformation strategy because a lot of what you need to drive your strategy going forward resides there. We've got scale, as I talked about earlier, both in terms of our own native capabilities, but very importantly, through our ecosystem partners. We have demonstrated measurable outcome across industries, in case studies that are available, for reference purposes. But as a business and as a company, we are very committed to investing in cutting-edge technology that will define the future. So AI, for example, we are going to push the boundaries of where that goes next. We're going to look at new business models, like I talked about in the marketplace. So to summarize, here's what I would say when you as customers are looking at strategies to embark on a digital transformation journey. It's very critical to identify the key points of value leaks or unrealized opportunity across your value chains. For us, I would say, every time we've engaged with customers, stepping back and looking at a value chain view, identifying where the problems lie and what you really need to address is critically important. Many people are making the mistake of not doing that. They're approaching this whole problem from the perspective of technology. And it has to be approached through the lens of business processes, and that's vitally critical. So look at the value leaks, look at the business processes and activities associated with these value leaks, right? Then determine the technology that is going to best enable value realization. And there are multiple ways that you can get value realization, right? Whether you choose to do this yourself, work with a partner, but you need to make sure that you're looking at one of these points, right? How do you leverage common information for decision and action across process areas? That gives you one indicator of what you really need to be looking at, right? How do you then digitize and automate workflows? That gives you the next lever in terms of what you can pull. Can you improve visualization? We looked at ADNOC as an example. That started with a visualization problem to get better visibility as to what's happening, but it then quickly leads into, okay, now I know something, so what do I do about it, right? And so when you get to that next point, you need to make sure that you're pulling in application capability that can drive it. And for God's sakes, I'd say, please don't start building applications. There's no shortage of applications out there. Look at what can best serve your purpose, right? And certainly challenge yourselves, challenge any provider in terms of interoperability. You've made valuable investments in your operating assets. You want to preserve them unless, of course, they're really long in the tooth and need to be upgraded. But make sure that you're leveraging your existing investments as much as possible and look at technology that will seamlessly integrate with that. And then make sure that it's scalable. Because one thing is for certain, that your operations are not going to remain static. Your boundaries will change. The context of your business will change. That shouldn't have to make you, 3 years from now, revisit a technology investment simply because it doesn't scale well enough. So test hard for scalability. Test hard to make sure that you have, or through your selected partners, you have the ability to support these investments wherever you operate and wherever it's relevant to you. Are all these points vitally important to check off? I'd say yes. But if you've got some of these that are more relevant than the others and get started with that, it's fine. But again, I can't overemphasize this. Don't start with the technology view. Start with the business process and value chain view. So that is my watch out as you start for this journey. Be business process-led, not technology-led, regardless of what the instruction may be from the top. And we have many customers who have come to us and said, my boss played golf with this person and said, go get digital. What does that mean? And it's amazing how common that problem statement is, right? It's okay not to implement all the buzzwords. Make sure that you're very, very clear on your journey. And that often leads to a lot of clarity. Be careful about proliferation of platforms. The one thing that is in abundance today in the market is everyone coming across and using the word platform. I did it today. But I did it because we have looked at it as a business and as a company through the lens of your business and value chains. And we as a business apply that same test of everything that we talked about earlier. Does this give you a starting point? Is it scalable? Can you bring in seamless applications? By the way, we are not just agnostic to systems on the ground, in the field, we are agnostic to other software. So if you've got other software that you've been using effectively and you need to integrate that in building an integrated application, bring it on. And we'll create the integration environment for you to be able to do that, okay? And so I think that's the key. Make sure that you're not proliferating yourself and your teams with so many platforms, and then that becomes a problem. If data and information was a problem of scale in the past, platforms should not become your problem because you're going about your digital transformation journey through a technology lens. This is best set by one of our customers at our Innovation Summit in the US last year. He was up on stage and he asked a question, and it was rhetorical, but I thought there was more than a grain of truth and realism in that. He said, so what does that really mean? He said, I look at the problem of digital transformation and it's like doing more of what we're doing, but doing it a heck of a lot better. And in many instances, I'd say that companies around the world, especially in the industrial environment, are already leveraging the foundational elements of what digital transformation means and what digitization means or digitalization or Industry 4.0. The key is how does it all come together, right? And making sure that you have clarity in your strategy. And so all I would submit is step back and make sure that you're looking at it through the lens of your business processes and your value chains. And then if you apply some of these tests, and this is not an exhaustive recommendation by any means, but think of it just as a guideline. If you apply these tests, you'll find that the answers are a lot clearer than an initial problem statement purely based on technology might be. So that really is what I wanted to say. We are embarked on a journey. We've embarked on a journey as a company from my starting slides of how we have now transformed into the new Aveva. For us, it's an exciting start. And it's an exciting start because I do believe that the landscape, both in terms of business challenges as well as technology, is profoundly changing like never before. And it's an exciting time for all of us to really reshaping ourselves at such an inflection point. And I do hope that we are able to work together, continue doing rich work together, in helping our customers derive more benefit. So everything that we've done so far, no hesitation in my mind in saying it's because of you, our customers, it's because of you, our partners. Our relationship here, for example, with EOH, starting as Wonderware Southern Africa and now maturing into a broader relationship that we have at EOH, representing the breadth of our portfolio, is one step in that direction. When we as a company don't have all of the footprint in one part of the world, we make sure that we have strong partnerships that enable us to reach our customers better and deliver our solutions better. That is a strategy fundamentally that doesn't change whether we were Wonderware at one point or whether we are Aveva now. So thank you for your support. Thank you, for making sure that you keep giving us, the feedback. That's really been of great help. I look forward to engaging with you. Our team look forward to engaging with you. More importantly, have a great exchange, have a great conference, and thank you.